Welcome. Tarin Hale is a seasoned attorney with more than 30 years of legal experience and a deep personal commitment to plant medicine advocacy. His journey from public defense to entheogenic law was shaped by a spiritual and psychological crisis that ultimately led him to sacred plant work, an experience he credits with saving his life. Tarin now bridges his legal expertise with a passion for defending religious and cognitive liberty, advising individuals and groups navigating the legal complexities of entheogenic use. He gained national attention in 2022 for his pro bono defense of Jessica Fitzmaurice, an Indiana nurse facing decades in prison for growing psilocybin mushrooms to treat her treatment-resistant depression. His coordinated effort with national experts, including Dr. James Fadiman, helped reduce her charges dramatically and sparked a wider conversation about mental health and plant medicines in the legal system. Tarin continues to support individuals facing prosecution. He consults on RFRA protections, which he'll learn more about in this speech, and speak on the spiritual context of psychedelic healing. He's joined today by Jessica Fitzmaurice. Jessica's rescue by Tarin is in itself miraculous, but even more remarkable is what happened next. During her house arrest and prosecution, Jessica completed the VITAL training, a 12-month certification program offered through Psychedelics today, dedicated to training facilitators in the essential aspects of psychedelic facilitation, care, and ethics. After moving to Northwest Arkansas, she attended the 2023 MAPS conference in Denver, where she and her husband Jake learned of the decriminalized nature movement, and she brought this knowledge and experience to our community and co-founded Decriminalized Nature Northwest Arkansas. Her resiliency didn't end there. After her felony was reduced to a misdemeanor, Jessica went through the long process of reinstating her nursing license in Arkansas. Tarin has often said that Jessica is the Rosa Parks of the psychedelic movement. Indeed, Jessica is a hero to us all. I have witnessed Jessica telling her story over and over and over and over again. Each time, her voice has grown stronger. Please join me in welcoming Tarin and Jessica to the stage.
Good morning. I'm kind of new to this public speaking thing here. Most of my speaking has been in courtrooms, and it's a little different atmosphere. So, oddly enough, I need to kind of read along here as I present my history a bit. Let me first say, though, I'm not in a rock band, and I do not play the instruments. My hair is my spiritual calling, which I could talk about later if you're interested. I've been practicing law for 30 years, and the first 15 years I was a public defender and civil litigation attorney. And my claim to fame was a 1999 murder case in which a 12-year-old boy was falsely accused of murdering a 5-year-old neighbor under a false confession. That case was a modern-day To Kill a Mockingbird story, and it left me very upset. We were able to win on appeal, but it left me very disillusioned about the law, and I had to leave a small town that I was part of and building a community with. And for the next 10 years, I went through several different jobs, several different locations, ultimately just not finding my purpose in life. In 2009, I suffered a midlife crisis, and I had given up. I threw in the towel. I was the breadwinner for a family of 4 children, and I couldn't take it anymore. And in that despair, someone suggested I attend a shamanic plant medicine ceremony. And when you're at the end of the ropes, why not? Certainly it was something outside of my spectrum of any kind of background. Despite my looks, I was never a cannabis person. I never engaged with any illegal substances. And I tried it. And that ceremony saved my life. From that ceremony and the several thereafter, I found meaning and purpose to my life and cured my depression. These experiences showed me how my perspective on life was really upside down, seeing only scarcity when there's really abundance. And it was clear to me that during these ceremonies, I was in direct communication with the intelligence of the universe, with Creator, with God. And it was clear to me that attending these ceremonies and my new understanding of life based upon them became my religion. When I use the word religion, I'm referring to a legal definition pertaining to the meaning and philosophy of an understanding of life, pertaining to the ultimate questions of life. Where did we come from? Who are we? What are we? Why are we here? What happens when we die? And how do we relate to the rest of the life around us? And I believe that in exploring these questions through the use of entheogenic compounds, I am pursuing and exercising my religious freedom. This work is my religion. The right to practice religion freely is a cornerstone principle of this country, recognized by the Founding Fathers to be an unalienable right. This right is spelled out in the First Amendment to our Constitution, which prohibits Congress from making any law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Going further, when the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case involving the use of peyote by a Native American, and he was punished, but he was denied unemployment benefits, Congress passed the 1993 Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It was an act passed specifically to allow for the use of a scheduled compound in a religious ceremony. That Restoration Act provides that if you're being harassed by the government, you can sue the government for an injunction and collect damages, including attorney's fees. Secondly, that if you are charged criminally, you can raise as a defense your freedom of religion. Since my first experience, my professional work has focused on the legal use of psychedelics in the context of religious freedom, and more recently exploring decriminalization laws. My work has been, since 2010 and up to the past couple of years, my work is very private. I had a few clients that were very underground. They did not want me to be publicly speaking on these things, creating any kind of target for me or for them. But in the past 3 years, I've had to step out of that. And I feel a need to share what I've learned. As part of my practice, I consult with people, facilitators, groups, and other about their legal rights using psychedelic compounds in a religious context individually or in forming churches. I also help people facing criminal charges related to possession of psychedelic compounds. Right now, it seems as though I'm the national public defender of psychedelic compounds. If someone gets charged with a crime and they don't have any money, people refer them to me. I've been blessed with other circumstances. I'm not independently wealthy. I'm supported by my wife, and she believes in this work, but I have not charged anyone for my work. And when talking with people about the application of religious freedom, I often encounter strong resistance to these words of religion and God. Do we have to call it religion? Do we have to call it a church? Do we have to use the word God? And sometimes I get this really confused question. Oh, I get it. We're going to pretend to be a church. While I can appreciate that many people have had bad experiences with mainstream religion and churches and ministers, I do not believe we should be afraid of or timid in using the proper terms to communicate what we are doing, nor to shy away from the fundamental experiences that these compounds provide. There is no pretense here for me. I believe the work is religious, and we need to use the words of our culture to explain to others and to assist ourselves in understanding what we are experiencing. This is my religion. This is my connection to God. One of my cases that you may have heard about was Jessica's case. In 2022, I was traveling quite a bit, and I would get home and I'd have hundreds of emails. And I'm on all the listservs for all the psychedelic stuff. It's crazy. And I came across this one. For some reason, it stopped me. Indiana nurse faces 10 years in prison for microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. I saw that, I couldn't believe it. What? I also found that the date on this was July 8th. The article is relayed here in terms of the fact that it describes how the cops busted down the door, pointing their guns at her, at Jessica, feeling that she was treating her like basically she was running a crack lab or something. The law in Indiana is that over 28 grams you are presumed to be trafficking. But she's, growing one mushroom is manufacturing a controlled substance under the law. Her whole world came crashing down. She lost her children. She lost her nursing. Her nursing license was in jeopardy. Her lawyer at the time tells her that through very neglectful circumstances, I'll say in the best terms, did a plea deal for her in which she would plead guilty and get a 15-year sentence and serve 10 years. So this wasn't a 10-year sentence, go in front of the judge and see what you can do. No, the plea agreement was a 15-year sentence, serve 10 years in prison. And luckily, at the end of the article, it said her sentencing hearing that was scheduled for July 11th was postponed to August 1st. It was actually due to her attorney got COVID. I didn't read the article until July 14th. It would have been over. She would have been in prison serving 10 years, but for the fact that this came across my email. And I reached out to her, like some crazy lawyer, I imagine. And I offered my services, how can I help you? And there's that magic word. Oh yeah, and I offer my support without charge. There it is. She responded with a kind of a pleasant letter, a response, and then we set up a phone call. At the time, she had actually was in Arkansas, so she didn't know that she forgot the time difference. And so when I called, she and Jake were at a Home Depot, talking to her on FaceTime as she's standing in the aisle at Home Depot. I'm trying to explain to her a little bit about what I do. My murder trial was actually featured on ABC's 2020 in 22, and so I was able to refer her to that to at least let her know that I was a legitimate lawyer of some sort. She closed the phone call with, "Thank you for calling, I appreciate your support. I'm gonna, while I'm in prison, I'm gonna finish my RN license degree and hopefully help people." I said, no, wait. Send me everything you got. She sent me everything she had, and I reviewed it, and I was furious. And I actually called up her lawyer and yelled at him. I demanded that he do something. I was challenging the weight of the psilocybin and several other constitutional issues. She had paid this lawyer over $10,000. He filed three or four continuances. The last one saying no. The judge said no more continuances, except for another pretrial. And he sent an assistant, who was an attorney. And the assistant showed up and said, "We're going to ask for another continuance." And she said, "No, the judge won't let us." And he went in and asked for a continuance, and the judge got upset. He said, demanded that either you take the deal or you go as to trial. He stepped outside in the hallway, said he picked up a phone, called the lawyer in charge, and then hung up the phone and told Jessica, "You got to take the plea deal." I tried to find another lawyer. I couldn't find another lawyer who would take the case because they said this judge is going to give her 10 years. I would waste her money if to hire someone else. And out of desperation, I reached out in my community, and luckily, finally, we found a lawyer who stepped up. But what was really powerful was the fact that she pled guilty. She had agreed to the plea agreement in June. She prepared a statement to a pre-sentence investigation report that goes in front of the judge before the sentencing. Her lawyer did not participate or help her in any way. And I'd like for her to read the statement that she prepared for her pre-sentence.
everybody. Thank you. This is what I wrote to the judge before she was sentencing me. I have been suffering from deep depression since my senior year of high school. I am 41 years old now. I have been on many types of antidepressant medications and been involved in mental health counseling, and nothing seemed to help. I had been trying my hardest to work my way through depression. It only intensified when my dad was killed in 2008. He was my lifeline, my go-to, and most of all, he had unconditional love for me. That meant everything. My mother and I never really had a strong emotional attachment. She did provide the basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter. I had this feeling of emptiness, and my whole world came crashing down when my father died. I had no one to turn to, no one who understood me like he did. I was suicidal. I was admitted to Parkview Behavioral Health in 2008 after his accident. From then on, I received off and on counseling and was on pill after pill for depression. I carried on with that regimen because I had started a family of my own. I had to be the best mom I could be to show my children love and support. I got through nursing school to pursue my dream of being a nurse, and I went far. I specialized in my career. I specialized in several areas, including ICU, geriatrics, pediatric ICU, and neonatal ICU. Then I started travel nursing. I carried more than one job most of the time. I had 5 kids to provide for. I felt the need to take on more than I was able. I broke down. I ended up going through a divorce because I thought that was why I was unhappy. I sought the help of a clinical psychologist in 2017. He showed me the root cause of my depression. It was the lack of emotional support from my mother when I was a child. I never heard the words, "I love you," from her. We were working on ways to work through my feelings. Michael and I, he was my therapist. I was on antidepressants and they still weren't working. I was thinking about suicide. I didn't have a plan, but I could not go on feeling the way I felt. I felt completely lost, broke down, and worthless. The only thing that kept me going were my children and my life as a nurse. I cared deeply about other people, and it brought me great joy and pride to make people better. I, however, felt that I could not be helped, so I turned to the internet. I turned to research journals. I turned to new studies being conducted. I read about several studies that treatment-resistant depression was drastically improving with psilocybin mushrooms. The subjects were microdosing the mushrooms with a protocol. The study was backed by several accredited major universities, like Johns Hopkins Research Institute, MAPS, and several studies were in progress showing promising results. So I tried this. I grew the mushrooms and encapsulated them into sub-effective microdoses. I did not feel as if I had taken anything. I felt normal. No effects of hallucination or any of the hype that goes along with tripping on mushrooms. I did it 3 times a week for a couple of months, and I began to feel better. I no longer felt like I wanted to die. I had the desire to live, and I realized that we had a beautiful world around us full of opportunity.
That's what she was doing. Desperate, suicidal, I asked her, I said, why did you try it? She said, Tarin, I wanted to die. And I thought, maybe before I do that, I should try this. I don't see how this can be a crime. That her statement was is very powerful. I was able to get a lawyer at the last minute to step in. We fired her lawyer. But before we did, he said we could withdraw the plea. We could withdraw the plea if we wanted to, but he said, let me tell you this, if you're not successful, she won't be serving 10 years, it'll be 20 years. And you have 24 hours to decide. The next morning, I met her at her house before that, and then the next morning she called me. She said, Tarin, I am not a criminal. Whether it's 10 years or 20 years, it doesn't matter. My life will be over. I was able, through my network of people, to get experts from across the country to write letters of support to explain microdosing, the need for it. Dr. Jim Fadiman was very powerful in using his name to get other people to recruit. Alan Davis from Ohio State showed up. C.J. Spotswood, Carolyn Dorson, Andrew Penn with Open Nurses that we did a podcast for in February, and Dr. Chris Bodrop, who is the psychiatrist for the Indiana Pacers, all volunteered. Only one of them charged us, and it was a minimal fee. Everyone wanted to do it for free. We were petitioned the prosecutor, and we were able to get the charge reduced to a single count of possession, 90 days house arrest. Decriminalization came out of Denver. There was Kevin Matthews and Matt Duffy, the two gentlemen who started it. I met with them, I flew out and met with them, and I was like, I don't understand, what is this, what is back in 17, 18, I don't understand, what is this? And they said, well, we followed the marijuana model. Marijuana decriminalization was based upon the fact that there are so many cases, so many people in jail, why are we doing this? I said, well, Greg, that makes sense. There is nobody in jail on psilocybin. It's very minimal. I said, well, we thought it would be a good idea. And it passed. And they didn't think it would pass. And I said, I can't go back to Ohio and say I want to do decriminalization on psilocybin mushrooms. People are going to think that I'm doing something illegal. I did not understand what decriminalization was about. Jessica is what decriminalization is about. It's about the right to try something to save your life when there's so much promising research from Johns Hopkins, NYU, that supports this. And you should not be a criminal for growing mushrooms in your own privacy. They're not dangerous. Marijuana is now either recreational or medically approved in this country with close to 40 states. There's one reason why it is. It's not dangerous. They lied to us. They scheduled all these compounds. They scheduled these compounds without any evidence of any danger. And when we did research on the toxicity and danger of compounds, and there's one that shines way above all others, and it's alcohol. And that's allowed. Psilocybin does not have a toxicity level. Water does. You can drink water to the point of death, not psilocybin. And it needs to be addressed. I represent several different people all over the country, and we're really, I believe that the future really is also in the religious freedom movement. I believe, and I talk with therapists who are doing facilitation, they're working with clients on this. When I really press them in terms of what do you think you're doing? When you read the DMT spirit molecule by Rick Strassman, who did the initial research on DMT, what is the people are describing contact with a greater consciousness. And I think we really need to embrace that more. I would have made the argument in Jessica's case, because further in her statement, she talks about the oneness. We found the oneness. I kind of joke, you may come for the depression and anxiety, but you're going to stay for the connection to God. Right? I'm encountering the same problem across the country, but two problems. One is that we're not facing federal charges. If we're facing federal charges, we've got the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which the feds understand and they are more respectful of. We're fighting this in state courts with judges and prosecutors who don't know anything about this, and it's a very slow process. And the laws are so draconian, it's impossible to fight. When you're facing 10, 20 years in prison and they offer you probation, how do you say, no, I want to spend $50,000, $100,000 on my attorney defense to see if I can get something less? And it's not fair. We're being denied our right to religious freedom through coercion. And we need to find a way to stand up. There is a, I believe the tide is turning. I believe the momentum is building in our favor. But I'm really hoping that I can educate people around religious freedom so that you understand that that's the core of this. I know it triggers people. I know some people don't like the word God. But let me tell you, the First Amendment says religious freedom. It's not spiritual freedom. It's not wellness treatment centers. It's religious freedom. And it's protected by everybody. When the UDV church was an ayahuasca church in 2003, they had a unanimous Supreme Court case that gave them authority under religious freedom law. And when they went to the Supreme Court, they had several churches write briefs in support. Conservative religious values support religious freedom. There's no opposition to it. The only opposition to it is the DA itself. And we need more cases. We need to create a case law. And I hope that you all will make further inquiry and pursue this in appropriate ways. I welcome it to any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, you know what to do. You've got a QR code. I'm going to check my computer. Does anybody have my computer? There it is. In the meantime, does anybody just want to raise their hand? Will I get the technology figured out?
This is me with Andrew Maternowski. He was the attorney that came to at the last minute to help us. And then Jessica was able to go to MAPS in 2023. And why don't you want to talk about that? Talk about what happened after? Stand up.
When we went to MAPS, we met several organizations and just learned about everything and anything in the psychedelic space. And when I became interested in microdosing, I had no idea there was a psychedelic community out there. I was just reading research articles in journals, medical journals. And so I got this opportunity to go to the MAPS conference in 23, and here I am standing with Andrew Penn. He's a nurse practitioner in California at a university, and Carolyn Dorson is standing right next to me. She's also a nurse practitioner, and they're both very involved in psychedelic work and research and education. And I got to meet them. They both wrote a letter of support to the judge in Huntington, Indiana, kind of explaining what people were using psychedelic medicines for. And this lady that I'm sitting with on the couch over here, I can't remember her name.
Diane Goldstein.
Diane Goldstein. I think she's a retired police officer, and she understands that people are using these medicines, and my memory is so bad from like all of the trauma that I went through then that I can't remember her story, but I knew that she showed me support, and she was a police officer, and it just meant everything in the world to me to know her. So.
I
think we have a question over here. Thank you for.
Thank you for sharing your amazing stories. Tarin, I'd like to hear about your hair.
I was hoping I would save it for later, but. Like I said, ABC did a 2020 2-hour special about my murder trial, and my wife calls it a hair revolution because it shows me with very short hair, and then as I evolved. I'm part of several different communities. One of my communities, there was a person born female who was transitioning into male, and I asked them what was the most significant part of it, and they said looking in the mirror and seeing how I felt on the inside. And when I looked in the mirror at the time, I had very short hair, and I was like, that's not me. And I've always wanted to grow my hair out. And then I also felt that spirit called me and said, grow it out. She said, you're a tall, white male, blonde hair, blue eyes, with a law degree. You have never experienced prejudice in your life, really. She said, you will. And I want you, when you feel that prejudice, I want you to hold your faith. And it's absolutely played out in many different ways where I have, there are people who get triggered by it and they very much throw hate at me. And there are other people who find it inviting and we engage in conversation. We were at a coffee shop one time and I didn't notice my wife, but after I got my coffee, I walked away and my wife said, that guy behind you, oh, he was hating on you. I was at a store one time and there was a gentleman with a veteran's cap starts walking towards me. And I was like, friend or foe, I don't know. And he walks up to me and says, you know, I used to have hair like that back in the 60s. So it's been a conversational piece of sorts. But it's also been very much a spiritual presence for me.
We have another question for you. This is for Tarin and Jessica. What does life look like post-trial for someone charged with possession? More specifically, if there is success, do you find you are watched more? Or do the authorities tend to leave you alone? Basically, do you feel safe? Can you speak to this, Jessica?
Yeah.
So, immediately after my arrest, I didn't feel safe in my town of Huntington, Indiana. I didn't feel comfortable even going to the grocery store. I was constantly looking over my shoulder because it was just a small town and everybody knew who I was and I'm supposed to be this respected nurse, but here the front page of the newspaper article says major drug dealer and charged me with child endangerment because I had children living in my home, and it was terrible. It was so terrible that Jake and I decided to move to Arkansas for our mental health, and it was really what we needed. The big mountain bike scene here, and then the first time I ever really felt community embrace, and you know, I just never felt that in Indiana my whole entire life, and I moved here and right away I knew I was in the right place. And yeah, and it's been a real struggle dealing with the consequences because my children were taken away from me, and now, you know, I had to pay for a lawyer to fight for to be able to see them again. I can see them now, but I can only see them on Christmas break, summer break, spring break. So So it's rough, and I'm trying to repair that relationship right now, but I'm really glad that all of this happened, because I feel like I was put here on this earth for a reason, and it's to fight for our own personal freedoms.
Our next question is for Tarin. We have several questions regarding the RFRA. And see if you can rapid fire these ones. Is there a government entity that handles this? It's my understanding that although it's our right, there's no one to process any applications to establish entheogenic churches. Is this true? Or what is the best advice you have for those of us who want to establish our legal rights to serve and to be served?
Wow. I got 5 minutes. See me afterwards, please. Religious Freedom Restoration Act provides that if you're being harassed by the government, you can sue them, or you can raise as a defense in a criminal case your religious exercise. The UDB won the Supreme Court case. The Santo Daime filed a Me Too lawsuit, and they were successful in 2009 or so. Following their success, the DEA established a guidance application process where if you want their approval, an exemption from the Controlled Substances Act, or you have to tell them who you are, where you are, what you're doing, why you're doing, who you're doing it with, where you're getting your stuff from, and then stop while they decide if you're going to be approved. The GAO, the Government Accounting Office, did a publication in May of 24, which found that out of all the applications that were filed, 0 were approved. Most of them having taken no action whatsoever. 8 of them were psilocybin churches. The GAO department was asking them or demanding or asserting that they should be doing something about it. The thing is that there's no requirement. There is no way to get a certificate from the government that says you're a certified church, because there's no requirement for it. I equate it to a right turn on red or a self-defense assertion. You can't go to court and say, oh, can I defend myself if this happens? It's hypothetical. Essentially what the government is saying, as far as I understand it, and I'm not providing any specific legal advice, but the way I understand it is that you have the right to do this. Go do it. If you're in violation, then you're going to be subject to, you could be subject to charges. But there is no pre-approval process unless you're being harassed, which isn't really pre-approval, it's harassment after you're doing it. And that's where we are right now. There's an organization called the Sacred Planet Alliance, an affiliation and breakout from the Shakruna group, which I'm part of, and they're potentially, they filed a lawsuit against the DEA trying to get clarity around these issues. But I haven't seen the complaint yet, but it really is a matter of asserting your rights and really bringing a sincerity to what you're doing. That's your security. But again, if you have a specific more question, please feel free to reach out to me.
We have just a couple minutes left. There are some specifics, like does the religious freedom include synthetics or natural medicines only?
The requirement of your religious freedom is sincerity of belief. That is the only standard that is applicable according to law. That is the only, and so we don't know exactly how that plays out. Ayahuasca was the sacrament that was in the UDB and the Santo Daime Church, which has been granted a court approval. But their approval was not, oh, they're allowed to do it. Their approval was what they were doing was protected and the government has to leave them alone. Ayahuasca has special purgative effects, some of you may know. It's not something that's been used recreationally ever, and so it has kind of a special status. Where we've been curious about what they would do with the mushroom church, which has a recreational presence and has been used, but there's also sincerity of belief around it. When you get into the synthetics, it becomes this whole unknown, and then it becomes the question for me of what is a synthetic? Some synthetics, I believe, are plant derivatives. They're derivative from plant, they're derivative from plant consciousness that have been used, synthesized, perhaps in a more safe, more standardized way. But it ultimately is the question I tell people. I gotta go in front of a jury, I got 12 people, I gotta convince them that what you're doing is a church of sincerity. And you may think listening to Pink Floyd and running around naked is your church. That's a hard sell for me. So let's, act accordingly.
Last question. Does the Religious Freedom Act apply to individuals or groups?
So, by the way, Sarko is another one of my clients that I helped. So I've got Jessica, I've got Sarko, I've got Dr. Fadiman. We talked. No, it's an individual. It's an individual right. You do not. I've talked to people like, I can't afford to be a church. Like it doesn't cost anything. It's sincerity of your belief. It applies to the individual. As I said, if you're being harassed, you can do it. If you're charged criminally, you can defend yourself. You don't have to have a church to defend yourself. You have to have a sincerity of your religious belief, and that's what I work so hard on people, to overcome some of the traumas that people have and they don't want to use those words, but I believe it's there.
Thank you, Tarin Hale.
Give us a little team standing ovations.